So now the items have been added. So now I have our craft resource icons here, so we can make use of this, which will make it look a little bit nicer in the end. So that's good. Which means that we can now go back to our data table again, and we can go to our icon here, and we can actually, let's do it this way. Go to craft resources, textures. Let's find something that we like here that looks like sort of like a health potion, I guess. Well, here we have a potion. How about we take that one? So this text regent 12b, for example. We'll go to our DT data table here, and we can click this button here, and we have that icon here saved. So, like so. And item class, it needs to be a specific item. That means that we need to create a class for it. So let's just make two classes quickly here. So our item pickup is going to be our parent class for us. From this, we're going to create a child class. The first one will be BP health potion. And we'll create another child class as well, which we'll call BP mana potion. Like so. So now if we go back to our data table again, we can see that we have a health potion we can choose here. And we can, this amount won't matter in this case here, so this doesn't, you don't really need to fill this. But max amount of stacks will be a limiter for saying how many can you actually have in one stack of these health potions. So for this one, let's say 99, but it can be whatever you want it to be. And item mesh for this, let's just pick a cube to begin with, and then we can change this later on if we decide to. And we're done with our first item in here now. So add another item, and we'll create a mana potion now. We'll have mana potion as the name as well. And we'll have a description saying restore mana. For an icon, we can again go into our craft resources here and see if we find something useful. So normally it's synonymous to a potion that is blue, because blue is generally how we expect mana to look. But we don't need to be limited like that. We can just take, for example, this text reagent 06b. So we'll use that one. And item class, we'll choose our mana potion that we used. Again, amount doesn't matter, and let's say we want 99 for this one as well. And then for item mesh, we can say maybe sphere or something like that. So shape sphere. Like so. Okay. So now we have actually created a lot of our foundation for our items to build upon. Now let's start adding some actual code to our pickups. So we go to the parent class called item pickup. And we open that up. Now we're not going to be needing a whole lot of things in this one. We're going to be needing a static mesh to have a visual representation in the world. And just to make sure that we have something at all, let's just pick a cylinder perhaps. Something like that. Seems a little bit big, but it'll be fine. And in addition to that, we want to have some kind of area around it which allows us to actually interact with it. So to do that, we add a box collision will be fine, I think. It is the cheapest of all of them. So this will be a proximity range. Actually, let's call it the pickup range, because that's a little bit more descriptive for what we're going to be doing. So this will be our pickup range. Now we can't actually see it much here, it's a little bit below here. We'll need to bring it up. We need to scale it a bit. So change to the scale tool and make sure that it encompasses the whole mesh. And then some. So basically this is the area where you will be allowed to pick it up. So you might be wanting to be a little bit generous to allow it for an easy pickup, so a player doesn't get frustrated by, like, I'm standing next to it, it doesn't allow me to pick up. And that's basically all when it comes to the actual pickup itself. Now, this item needs to have a variable, and this variable should be called item info. And this is because this will be of the type structure as item info that we made earlier, so that this item has this variable as its properties. It is what symbolizes this is. And we want to make this instance editable and exposed on spawn as well. And now we need to add some code for this. So I talked a little bit earlier about how we wanted to make or adding the amount didn't matter for the data table, but the rest of the things do. This is why the amount didn't matter. When we have an object in the world, what we want to do is we want to have its item info, and from that we want to type break, which will allow us to get all of its components. And the one we're after right now is the amount one. Now, what we want to do is a check against the amount, because we want to check if this amount is greater than 0. If it is not 0, or if it is 0, we want to actually change this amount, and we do that by setting an item info, and we do a set members. So what's going on here is we want to make sure that an item in the world always has at least 1 in quantity of itself. If it has 0, we don't want it to be in the world, basically. So with this set members info chosen up here, you can see up here we have a default category, and if you click on a checkbox over here, you'll expose that pin. So here we expose the amount, and we're gonna set 1 as the actual limit. So if we have something in the world that has 0 as quantity, we're gonna set it to 1 in quantity, because we don't want it to exist without a quantity. After that, we want to update our information about this, and this is where all of the things that we've done so far comes into play. So let's start off with making we're going to be changing this in a little bit, but I'm just going to be, can remove these. We're going to make a custom event for now. And we're going to call this update item info, like so. And this update info is what we want to be doing over here. So regardless if it had more than 1 in quantity or 0 in quantity, after we have passed through this part, we want to update the item info for both of them. And this is where we make use of the things that we did earlier, because now we're going to say, let's actually do it like this. Let's say this one should have an in parameter of type s item info, and this will become clear later, but I can go through it a little bit for now. So when we later on will be dropping items from our inventory down to the ground, we want to do this in a slightly dynamic way. And to do that, we will have some limitations that we will need to work around, and this function or event that we're creating right now will be one of those things. So we'll call this parameter new item info. So what we're going to be doing is we drop an item from our inventory into the world, and then we go and check in our data table to see, okay, what is this item supposed to look like? And then we get all the information from the data table row, and then we update this item with that info, making sure that it looks and feels and has all the appropriate information. So what we need to do is we need to break this item info again. And from here, right, we didn't change that yet. We go back to our structure item info, because I said we were going to be changing the name before here. The type needs to be changed to the new type that we made, that's called e_items, the enumerator that we had, like so. And by default it can have this backslash that we created, that's fine. So now we have this name over here that's green, which means it's an enumerator. And if we were to drag out and type switch, for example, switch, you can see that it will present us with all the available information here. All the options that we have actually created so far. So what we want to do is we want to read from the data table. So we can type in get data table, and we want to have a get data table row. This means that we want to get one specific row from our data table. Now we need to define which data table we're interested in, and we only have one, so we'll choose the DT items. And then you can see that you have a drop down here of all the items that are available to you now. And that's all good and fine, but we don't know which item we want to get here because it's stored in the information that we're getting over here. So we need to make this name, which is going to be our key, remember? And we'll type this to a toString, and you want to have the one that says enum toString, which is the user-friendly name, which means it will get the actual wording of this. It will get the health potion or mana potion from here. And the reason we want that is because if we plug it in here now, it will convert it to the same type here, which is a name, so from string to name. And that will then go through the database table and try to find whatever matches this. That is why the enum here needed to be, this one, needed to be spelled exactly like in the data table's row name here, for it to be able to find the correct one. Also, now that I'm here at the data table, we can see here that the name has actually been changed here as well, because we changed the type. So if we double click on the health potion, and we change that one from / to health potion, and the mana potion to mana potion, like so, so that they're matching. Yes, so going back here again then. So the point of doing this is we get from our data table row the information about our object. Meaning, if we go to our data table here, if we were to search for health potion, for example, we would be able to get the name, the description, this icon, which class it is, how many items, which again didn't matter, the max stack, and what mesh it has. With all of this information, we're able to put an item in the world that has all of this information properly set up, like according to the data table. If it doesn't make sense right now, it will hopefully make more sense later. But yeah, so we get our result over here. What we need to do here is break this, because this will be an item info just like before. And what we want to do is we want to actually now set our item info. So we have this item info in here, and we want to set members like before. But we don't want to set exactly everything. Like we talked about earlier, one thing we do not want to alter is the amount. So what we do is we click on all of these checkboxes to have all of them exposed. And then we actually we don't need a name one, but we drag in the description, we can drag in the icon, we can drag in the item class, and we can drag in the max stacks, and we can drag in the item mesh, like so. For the item amount, we're going to take actually the item amount from here, and we're going to be typing out a clamp, like so. And this value should be between, again, 1 is the least that we will be expecting, but we should be making sure that we actually don't end up with less than 1 over there. And then a max over here, which is just something to make sure that it's going to be a reasonable value. So let's say something like that. So these are the limitations within this, and then we can clamp it up here. Now, this isn't super necessary. Most likely it's fine to just drag the amount over here into here. This is just for safety precautions. So it's up to you if you want to keep it or not. But it's probably good to follow everything I do exactly, so that you end up with exactly the same end result as I do. And then in the end, when we're done, you can tweak and change everything to however you want it to look like. But basically this event now is done. We will be changing it a little bit later, but these infos here now, they have a lot of exposed pins that we are not really interested in. So if you have it selected, you can go up here and click hide connected pins. And that will allow it to shrink a little bit in size. This one has only one that's not exposed. We can at least hide that one, like so. Now, this is more or less everything we're going to be doing with item pickups. Let's just add a little bit of functionality when it comes to this thing that we did here. Actually, we can probably leave it like this for now anyway, and then we'll change it later. But let's look a little bit at this. We can like so. So save everything. Now with our item created, we want to actually be able to pick it up, right? So since this is a third-person character template, we will open up our third-person character. And on this character, we will be creating an event. Now we probably should be making an input event, so let's actually do it properly. We go to Edit, Project Settings. We go to Input over here. And we have action and access mappings, and we want to add an action mapping. So we'll create one here, and we'll say, let's call it interact. And let's say that we put it on keyboard E. That didn't help at all. Let's just find it like this then. Keyboard and the E key. So this will be our default interaction button, which is normally how it's done in games. We close that and we go back to our character and we right click and we go interact action event. So this is now our input event that we created that will interact with the world that we have made this box around it, which we will overlap with if we're in range. So what we're going to be doing is just get overlap in actors, and that way we should be getting all actors that are within range. So if there are multiple of them, they will all be appearing here. So we need a loop to work through all of these. And we do it like so. And as a class filter, we don't want anything really. But then when we have found each of these items, we want to interact with them, right? So we don't know which kind of actors this will be. So we will be creating a interface so that we can add this to our pickups. And that will allow them to be interacted with. So let's go under blueprints and then blueprint interface, and then we'll call this BPI, and then we'll call it interactable, like so. And then we can open that up. From here, we'll just rename this function that is created in the start here to interact with. And as an input, we're going to be using a player controller. And the reason we want to have a player controller is because we want to say that when we interact with something, we want to let them know who that person is, in case we need to make use of that. So that's why we're doing this. So we'll call this interacting player. So since we will be having, in this specific case, we will make a game system where we won't have any AI or anything like that interacting with things. So we don't need any kind of other controller here. If you had a game where you wanted to make something interactable for AI and players, then you could just have the class B controller instead, which would then encompass both player controller and AI controller, since they're both derived from controller class. But yeah, we send in an interacting player to this, like so. So now we can go back to our item pickup. And for this class, we go to class settings, and then we add the interface we just created, so BPI interactable, like so. This will allow the interface to have this, well, in this case it's going to be an event, but this interface method or function or event up here, we're going to be implementing that event like so. And for this, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be telling this object that if it is interacted with, we're going to be trying to send this to the inventory of the player that interacted with us. Since we don't know if this player actually will have space to pick this up, we will handle it in the way that this object will not care. It will just check if this is something that has an inventory that interacted with me, so a player that had the inventory. Try to add it to him, and if it's not possible, then the inventory will itself handle the ejecting of the item back into the world. So what we can do is we can start off with we can get item info. We can promote this to a variable. Not like, actually, never mind. Let's not do that. Like so. Let's do it like this. We have a player, and we want to. I think we should do it this way. Let's prepare a few more things here, because now we sort of need to start getting into the inventory parts of the code. So the plan I had for this is that I want to have an inventory that's easy to put on an actor and just have it work, and the best way to do that is by doing an actor component. So we're going to be creating an actor component. So we'll go to blueprint class and then actor component. And we'll call this bpc underscore inventory. So this will be the component that will be holding our inventory basically. So we open this up. Actually, before we do that, let's actually create another interface as well. Let's create under bluprint interface, we call it BPI, and then we'll call it inventory. So here we will be having all our functions that are related to the inventory component, making sure that we can easily communicate without having to do casts and things like that. So we'll be adding functions to this interface as the need arises. So let's go back to our blueprint component here now and talk a little bit about this. The very first thing we want to do is we have this item in the world and we want to pick it up and we want to send it to the inventory. So we want to create a function that allows it to actually accept an inventory item. So we open up the blueprint interface. Actually, we first add it to here. To class settings, we go and add BPI interactable, like so. And we actually go to our character. And for our character, we will also be adding this interface inventory, like so. And this also applies to all objects that no, never mind. So yeah, we've added this interface now to the third person character, and we go back to our interface, not interactable. Where did it go? There, inventory. No, that's the component. Sorry, my bad. Did we not open it up? Inventory, there. So let's add a function called add item to inventory. So this will allow us that any actor that implements this interface, we can send an item to it by using this function, is the point. So we will add some inputs to this. We'll add a s_item_info type. We'll call this the item to add, like so. Compile and save. And we can go to our item pickup now, and we have our interacting player here. The problem here is that we're getting a controller here, not the actual pawn. We have put the interface on the pawn, not the controller. So, like I spoke about in the earlier, it's you can have it on an inventory on a controller or a pawn. It's up to you how you choose to, but in this case I've chosen to have it on the pawn itself. So we need to get the controlled pawn of this player controller, which will give us this third-person character. And then from this we then say we want to add item to inventory. And since it's an interface, we don't need to do any casting. So that's how that works. But we want to, after we have done this, we want to destroy this item that we're actually, this pickup that we have here. Which means that if someone were to interact with this and it didn't have this interface, then it would still destroy the actor, and that's not really what we want. So we need to make sure first that whoever we're trying to send this message to actually has the interface implemented, so that we don't accidentally destroy the actor and nobody's actually picking it up. So we'll add a branch here and say that implements interface, and then we'll send in the true there, and we'll say the interface that we're interested in here is the inventory one, like so. And what we need to check it against is the pawn here. So if this pawn implements this interface, then we'll try to add it to the inventory with this interface call, and after that we'll destroy this regardless of if this worked or not, because this will be handled later on by the inventory is the plan. So like so, and like that, we'll do it like so, and the item to add is the item info that we have over here, like so. So this is going to be the whole interacting with functionality. Now we need to actually do something with this. So let's do that. That is all for this episode. Hope to see you in the next one. Keep on learning. Take care.